Hey there, welcome back to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Yeah, let's go. Your top story of the day, some heavy words about Iran coming out of Donald Trump. We found out he made himself available to press questions when he was meeting with Netanyahu yesterday. So it's Trump, it's J.D. Vance, it's Pete Hegseth on one couch, and then they have Netanyahu sitting by himself in a chair at a 90-degree angle to them. And then there's another couch across from him, but I only got to see their legs, so I don't know who that was. But he was asked about this meeting with Iran. There had been rumors. You're meeting with Iran on Saturday? Yeah, we're meeting with Iran on Saturday. Oh, well, what's going on with that? So before I start interpreting it for you, let me let you hear it for the first time, just untainted by the outside world.
On Iran, two questions, please. First, if you can give us more details about where the meeting on Saturday is going to take place.
I can't tell you that. I can just tell you there's a major meeting going on between us and Iran, and that'll take place on Saturday, and it's at top level.
And the second question about this. A lot of people think that those talks are not going to lead anywhere because the Iranians will never give up their nuclear program. If diplomacy fails, is the United States, under your leadership, ready to take military action to destroy the Iranian nuclear program and remove this threat?
I think if the talks aren't successful with Iran, I think Iran is going to be in great danger. And I hate to say it, great danger, because they can't have a nuclear weapon.
So is that a yes?
You know, it's not a complicated formula. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's all there is.
So is the U.S. ready?
Right now we have countries that have nuclear power that shouldn't have it, but I'm sure we'll be able to negotiate out of that too as part of this later on down the line. But Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And if the talks aren't successful, I actually think it'll be a very bad day for Iran if that's the case. Yeah.
Okay, so before we go forward in what this means, let's go backwards. And okay, we can only go backwards a few months before I make my first point. This level of transparency, openness, just taking questions without knowing who's asking them, without knowing what they're going to ask, and doing it for long periods of time, just unscripted, unprepared, unedited, for all the world to see. That is more open, honest communication than you got during the entirety of the Team Blue presidential effort in the last cycle. Kamala Harris didn't do it. Former President Biden didn't do it. They would come out and they would either have a pre-recorded interview where they knew the questions in advance and it's in a safe, friendly, allies setting. Not Trump. Trump just goes out there. I don't even know who you are. Who are you? What's your question? That's what we were asking for with Kamala Harris. And, you know, for if Democrats are doing any soul searching and wondering, you know, why was there a lack of enthusiasm for the last election cycle? That's where I would start. Make yourself available. At least pick somebody who can handle such a situation. And you might not like Trump's answers, and you may think he's a little sloppy or inarticulate with his responses or juvenile or whatever, but at least he's trying. At least he's doing it. It's more than the last guys did. And I was making that point about him Sunday night. He was on Air Force One. And I imagine, you know, the thought process was about this shallow. Where it's like, well, I'm sitting here doing nothing. Might as well stand up, walk to the back of the plane where the press is hanging out and just answer some questions. On camera, live, unscripted, totally off the cuff. Anyone can ask anything, and we'll just deal with the consequences, whatever comes out. So, first off, kudos for that level of transparency. Now, let's go even further back and stop making political points here and start looking at what we already have on the record. Because this Iran thing is not happening in a vacuum. These Iran deals are something that is now just a regular pattern of life that you've had to observe through the last few presidents here. They get in there and they want to make a deal with Iran. And the premise is we can't let them have a nuclear weapon. Now, when Obama did it, Obama told the world that 99% of the world liked his deal with Iran in 2015.
I'm hearing a lot of talking points being repeated about this is a bad deal. This is a historically bad deal. This will threaten Israel and threaten the world and threaten the United States. I mean, there's been a lot of that.
Will it threaten the hum in your microphone?
What I haven't heard is, what is your preferred alternative? If 99% of the world community and the majority of nuclear experts look at this thing and they say, this will prevent Iran from getting a nuclear bomb, and you are arguing either that it does not, or that even if it does, it's temporary, or that because they're going to get a windfall of their accounts being unfrozen, that they'll cause more problems, then you should have some alternative to present.
All right, so now let's give Obama half credit. He's right. He did a deal with them. They still haven't got a nuclear weapon. That's good. But it did infuse them with a whole bunch of cash that they did cause more chaos in the region. So half the criticism was correct. And half of Obama's stated intent actually did work. But how is that due to Obama's deal? Well, we don't know. We don't know. It's hard. You know, money's fungible. Who knows how much money they would have spent without the deal? Who knows if they would have gotten the bomb without the deal? I find it really suspicious. Because how long did it take for us, and us, I just mean the United States, we weren't alive, but how long did it take the United States to do the bomb, to get a nuclear bomb? The Manhattan Project, right? So what, less than 4 years? We just gathered the greatest minds in the world with all the information that we had available to us in 1944. Didn't have a calculator, didn't have a smartphone, didn't even have a 56K modem, didn't have a speak and spell, nothing. We didn't even have those little viewfinders where you could see 3D pictures. But how can we do it with 40s technology, with no computers, only knowing the stuff we knew in the 40s? Like, we didn't even have 50 states when this was going on. We didn't even have color TV. And we did it in 4 years. And these dudes have been actively trying to do it for, what, 25? Depends on when you want to start the clock. 40 years on the long run. Maybe 40, let's see. When was the revolution? 79? So what, 46-ish years? And we know that they've had a nuclear program and they've got centrifuges and they've been spinning uranium. We know for at least 20 years. Persians aren't dumb people. And I use the term Persian because Iran is just a few tribes. I'm talking specifically about the Persians. They have a long history of being good at science and being good at math and figuring things out. And there was a time and place in world history not that long ago where that little area was the most scientifically advanced place on Earth. And it blows my mind. Look what they do when they come over here. We have great Persian scientists. We have great people. I had an 8th grade algebra teacher that was Persian. So he got me all gassed up when I was a kid. Now I've read your history. Big fan. Cyrus, Darius, Xerxes, all that good stuff. These people can't come up with nuclear weapons? What the heck is going on? So I'm totally suspicious about that. But when Obama says 99% of the world liked his Iran deal, you're going to hear from the other 1% of the world. What was Donald Trump saying when that deal was signed in 2015? And we'll compare that to what's being said now. I'm kind of suspicious of this whole enterprise here because Iran has been at this for around 20 years and they still hadn't managed to come up with the bomb. I mean, what are they? Is there some sort of sabotage going on? Is there an internal saboteur? I remember the story about how we made their centrifuges spin. I think we broke into their system and burnt up a bunch of their centrifuges and set them back for a year. But I don't know. I've always found this situation to be quite suspect because you've been told since John McCain was running for president in 2008 that Iran is just months away from getting the bomb, and we can't let that happen. They're like 3 months away. They're like 9 months away, and therefore we've just got to bomb them.
That old Beach Boys song, Bomb Iran. Bomb, bomb, bomb. Anyway.
So that is the John McCain's of the world excuse to bomb Iran. It was Obama's excuse to give Iran billions of your dollars. Trump didn't seem to do much with it. He killed Soleimani the second they popped their head up, and then they just laid low for his 4 years. And then, strangely enough, Joe Biden also found an excuse to give Iran billions of your tax dollars. And if I had a nickel for every time a Democrat president in your lifetime invented some strange excuse to give them billions of dollars, I would only have 2 nickels. But that's still kind of a lot. Dr. Jeff Broder back on from Rigaku. He's an expert in chemical, biological, radiological weapons, nuclear. So perfect person to ask. Dr. Jeff Broder, this meeting that is happening on Saturday is being Being promoted is a high stakes meeting. Are the stakes really that high?
Well, they should be if they're not, and it's good to be back with you. I appreciate it. As long as they're talking and not shooting, that's a good deal.
So, what's your response to my confusion on how Iran has been pursuing a nuclear weapon openly for 20 years? I'm sure it's longer than that, and haven't been able to come up with one in modern technology when they have computers and the internet and the trappings of 2025. When we did it in 4 years in the 1940s.
That's a very good question. I have no answers. I have more questions than that. I wouldn't compare them to the United States. I try to compare them to North Korea that still did it in less than 10 years. But they have actively pursued, they expressed an interest in the 1950s, which caused the U.S. under an Atoms for Peace program to gear their energy to peaceful exploration and nuclear power plant sort of end states. In 1970, they signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is the binding legal document that we are holding their feet to the fire because they ratified that treaty and said they never would pursue nuclear weapons, but their actions and their words speak differently.
Well, no one buys the idea we're just interested in commercial electricity production. No, you're not.
It's an oil-rich state. Why do you need a nuclear power plant? Mm-hmm. You don't have to buy your fuel from anybody. You're standing on it. And I think we have the great Americans at Langley to thank for some of the diversion efforts that they sent them on.
Is that a CIA reference?
Yeah, I think it is. Okay. Yes, sir. They led them, down a rosy path and led them to believe through some disinformation campaigns, and it probably set them back a number of years. They were also able to manipulate their imports for parts and things, so that when they arrived and they screwed bolt A to bolt B, it didn't work. It was the wrong size. Things like that add up over years. But you're right. At this century, I think I wouldn't put a mark on the wall in 1967. So call that 1970. So that's about 50-something years that they've had waned or increased interest in nuclear weapons. Certainly between 1980 and 88, when Iraq was beating them on the battlefield, they wanted a nuclear weapon. But I don't know. They're just not the sharpest knife in the drawer, are they?
They haven't seemed to be. But we also have, proxy wars, plural, going on with Iran right now. When they were lobbing all the missiles and drones at Israel last year, and we were shooting them down. That's kind of a hot situation there. That's not a Cold War. That's a hot war. And then this whole thing with the Houthis, that's just a proxy for Iran, if I'm not mistaken. So we do have sort of two different fronts going on against these guys right now.
No, you're absolutely right. Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis are all part of the axis of resistance. They're surrogates for the Iranian government, because remember, the Iranian military is not an expeditionary military. You're not going to see a brigade of Iranians deploy to another country. They don't know. They can't do it. That's their weak point. They've been trained, organized, and equipped to guard their borders and allow other people to do their dirty work. If Israel decides that they want to do an airstrike this month, it's going to be a whole lot easier than it was last year when they went in almost unconfronted by Iranian air defense forces, because there's no Syrian Air Force this time. They can use all of that airspace as a shortcut to get there. And if the United States provides direct support, and that is any fighter aircraft that's Iranian flies, it dies. Any maritime vessel that looks like it's hostile or is part of the Navy, it sinks. It's not too difficult. The Iranians are, I don't know that they've been this weak or this cornered in a long time. I think the president knows that, and he wants to take the opportunity to put them, we call it compassionate coercion. right? The right thing for you to do to survive next week is to come to this talk and agree. The hard part is going to be getting to yes. And I don't know if that's feasible. I don't know if there's an ending to this story. They live happily ever after because the leadership in Iran wants Israel eliminated as a country, as a people, as a history. And we won't allow that to happen.
You think we'll ever get back to the Iran that we had before the Islamic Revolution? Guys running around in suits and ties, women wearing bikinis on the beach, and it just being a normal place again. And the fact that, not that they're abnormal, it just kind of looks like the Old Testament now.
No, it's easier, and I think we're pretty close to it, to be honest with you. We just need to get over this hurdle. And what I mean by that is there are some brilliant young adults in Iran that were educated in Western Europe and the United States. They know what right looks like. They're sitting on a country with immense resources. They can turn that country around pretty quick and be a leader in the free world. They just need to rid themselves of the leadership and the regime that they've got right now. And that's going to require them to do it. I think they'll have plenty of support, but the young adults of Iran have got to be fed up, and they've got to change. They've got to call for an action, a change in leadership. If they do that, then that's an easy solution. If they don't, and Khomeini remains in power, then, we'll be playing this game of containment or whack-a-mole with Iran.
Yeah, I still hold quite a bit of optimism for this situation. I hope it goes well on Saturday, and I really appreciate your expertise on this. Dr. Jeffrey Brodeur from Rigaku, thank you. How's your stock portfolio doing? And for some people out there, you're like, I don't own any stocks. Well, if you have a 401k or an IRA and you're just throwing money in some target date fund, you own stocks. They may be wrapped up in an ETF or a mutual fund, but you own stocks. You have some kind of investments. And actually, I was looking it up yesterday. 66% of millennials own stocks at this point. And we think of millennials as kids and young adults. They're like 27 to 42-ish now, or 44, depending on 45, wherever you want to start the clock there. A lot of people started at 1980. Which actually makes Miss Parker a millennial. Hi, Miss Parker. Things were looking pretty good earlier today. I think I ruined it, though. Stocks were rallying for most of the day until the James Show started, and then it just dipped into the red territory. But it was kind of a gradual slide down. Now, there's still reasons to be pessimistic with all the tariff stuff flying around. But also, there's little green shoots of optimism. Scott Bessent was asked about countries negotiating coming to the table, and the number keeps getting higher and higher.
I haven't seen anything from them, but Larry, I can tell you that there are 50, 60, maybe almost 70 countries now who have approached us. So it's going to be a busy April, May, maybe into June.
So maybe 70 countries are already reaching out and negotiating on the tariff situation. This thing, I feel like it might wrap up in just a few weeks, maybe a few months at the latest. But I am starting to doubt if we will even think about this for 5 seconds a year from now. Let's ask Kathy DeWitt from DeWitt & Dunn. You hear on the weekends here on WBAP. Kathy, what do you think? Is this going to be a short-lived tariff war, or are we going to still be worried about this a year from now?
Well, it could be short term now, but I think, if we take a look over the next 12 months, we could have another tariff war, right? So there's a lot of whiplash going on right now. And if we all knew what the answer was, we would know how to invest correctly and wisely. Would you agree? Especially what you were just saying, James, you started coming on the air and then the market went down today.
Right. Well, see, you passed the smell test that I was giving out yesterday on the James Show, where if anybody says with certainty what they think is going to be happening a year from now, they're lying to you, because nobody knows. You could have a prediction. You can have like a scenario, like a likelihood of, 60% chance there will be a recession, or a 40% chance that we'll still be dealing with the tariffs. But anyone who acts like they know, this is going to be terrible for the economy, I'm really suspicious of those people, because none of us really know.
No, we don't. But I mean, the challenge is you've got to make sure that your portfolio is balanced correctly. You need to take a look at it. For a lot of people that are out there that just buy and hold forever, I mean, depending upon your age, you might need to change your allocations, look at things a little bit differently. But, don't panic. That's rule number one.
Yeah, and I hear a lot of frustration from people who you just clearly don't have an understanding of what it means to be invested in the stock market. If you're just going to be in all stocks, don't be upset when stocks go down 20% and your portfolio goes down 20%. That's what you set it up to do. And so I try not to, blame the victim in a situation like this, but if you're unhappy with the way your portfolio performed, then you don't have your assets allocated properly. You're in the wrong investments. You're probably too overweighted in stocks or whatever other risky thing that you're in. So a lot of that just is in the poor hands of the people who set that up.
Yeah, I agree with you. But, one of the things I tell my clients all the time is if you can't handle the ups and downs of the market and think, look at it from a long-term investment and you're going to freak out every time, then you don't need to be in the market.
Yes.
I mean, if you can't handle the ups and downs, why are you there? There's other alternatives. There's other things you can do with your money instead of panicking every time we see red on our screens.
Well, let me ask you a couple more impossible questions, but, we'll take our best educated guess at it. Is this the bottom of the drop, or is there still more room to fall? And then how long will it take to recover? Two totally impossible questions. I would just like to hear what you say about it, Kathy.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that it's over. I think it's going to fall a little bit more. We're going to see what happens here over the next week or two. But you have to look at it from a different perspective. There's going to be some great buying opportunities, but you've got to really have a plan in place, and you can't have all of your eggs in one basket. And if you have a great retirement plan or a financial plan in place, this shouldn't be making a big difference in your portfolio anyway, right? So then let's take a look at what are some of the opportunities are going to be here in the future, and let's take advantage of them. But I don't think that we've seen the end of it.
Well, also, there's a big concern for people who are really close to retirement or already retired. They can't really weather volatility as well as the rest of us who are still going to be putting money into our accounts for the next decade or so. But good news on that front, Social Security checks, some of them are going to be going up next month because they ended the windfall elimination provision. Most people don't know what that is, but for the people that do and they're affected by it, this is a big deal.
It's a huge deal, but anytime you can get extra money and you're going to get a pay increase, regardless if it's Social Security from your investments, that's great news, especially right now with what we're seeing. Having any good news is a win-win for everybody.
Right, and if you don't know what we're talking about, if you have a government pension, a lot of times they won't let you get your Social Security check or your full Social Security check unless you have 30 years of credits worked into Social Security. So if you were exempted from Social Security, it's designed to prevent you from double dipping, and now they've removed that rule to where, hey, that's nice and generous here, but that's not good for the long-term actuarial table on the Social Security Trust Fund.
Well, we're going to have some big problems with that down the road. I mean, we've been seeing all the reports, and I think, going back to, your comment about millennials, and we take a look at, the Gen Z, they're going to be the people that are really going to be impacted by the decisions with Social Security. I don't necessarily think that people in our age bracket or a little bit older are going to be impacted, but you've got to really start saving money like you mean it, because you're not going to be able to count on the government to take care of you later down the road.
All right, we hear your show Sundays at 11 o'clock on WBAP?
Yeah, 11 and 4 p.m. after a couple of decades plus.
All right, there you go. Kathy DeWitt from DeWitt & Dunn. Appreciate it.
Thank you, James.
All right, coming up next, we'll break down some of the moves a little further in the economy. And I just want to stress so hard that all you people who are making these hardcore predictions about what you think the market's going to do, you need to just tap the brakes and admit that you can't see the future. You don't even know what the market's going to look like next week. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. So for those of you who are concerned, the market's being down, yeah, a lot of us lost some money when the markets take a dive like this. That's fine. Why do I still sound optimistic? Well, because I have a long time horizon. I know it's going to come back. I know it's probably not going to drop that far anyway. And I don't think the tariffs are something that's going to be here in a year or 2 years or 3 years. And I don't think all the tariffs are going to be repealed. But the tricky part about having the whole world aligned against you is that it only takes a few of them to step up and make a deal before the whole thing collapses. Because so like, for example, like last year when Joe Biden put a 50% tariffs on solar panels on China. Now, you remember how the media was crying and screaming about raising prices and inflation and all. Oh, you don't remember? Yeah, because that didn't happen. But All you have to do is go find someone else to make solar panels or make them locally, or, a mix of the two, a change in technology. Somebody builds a new machine that's stick in a factory. There's all kinds of innovations and ways around this and alternative suppliers and whatnot. So all we have to do is find another country that's like, well, we'll take the technology that you have. We'll use our near slave labor, near free labor, because we're a third world country with a bunch of people not doing anything more productive than that. And you can still get your solar panels, maybe not as cheap as you got them from China, but pretty damn close. So, yeah, prices might go up, but it will be minimal and not pretty insignificant if there's other people who aren't standing firm on the tariff situation. And that's exactly what Janet Yellen said last year. I'm not going back in time to 1984 and pulling some stuff out of context. This was the Treasury Secretary for Joe Biden last year when he raised there were some other tariffs, but he raised a bunch of tariffs on China, solar panels, tungsten products, random stuff like that they were undercutting the U.S. market on. And at the time, I think a lot of people in the Team Red media were slapping their forehead and thinking, I thought we needed these solar panels to save the world. I thought without cheap solar energy, we're all going to head to catastrophe and Miami will be underwater and it'll be hell on earth. Oh, no. You're actually putting a tariff on these guys. You just want to make them here so you can control who gets the subsidies and this is about control. That's the point that was made back then. But now it kind of reads a little different, because listen to Janet Yellen. I'm telling you, this was just last year saying tariffs don't raise prices.
As you have seen, there have been some experts, some groups, the National Retail Federation among them, who've expressed concerns that it will be U.S. consumers who eventually end up paying for these tariffs. As you know, polling shows that rising prices are voters' biggest concern right now. So I'd ask you to speak directly to them. Will American consumers bear the cost of these tariffs?
I don't believe that American consumers will see any meaningful increase in the prices that they face.
As you have seen, there have been...
All right, so there you go. Just last year, tariffs weren't economic catastrophe waiting to happen. It wasn't going to be a gouge on the poor, innocent victim U.S. consumers. It was like, there might be some price increases, but it won't be significant, won't be noticeable. But now, you're supposed to be scared. Don't buy it. No need to freak out. Be a little optimistic. Show a little backbone there. Coming up next, what did Jasmine Crockett say done this time? Something about picking cotton. I'll let you hear from her so I don't get in trouble for this one. But I have a little bit of cotton picking history to sort of go with the next soundbite. And so now you're thinking, oh my goodness, what is this going to be? You'll find out after the news break here. But also, I'm doing a segment in the 4 o'clock hour. I think I need your help on it, because I'm not very good at this. Where do people who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, where do y'all go to meet? Like single people? Where do y'all go to meet? This is something I hear from my single friends on an all too regular basis. I hear it from listeners. People email me. I see it online. I see people posting about it on social media, how just terrible the dating scene is for older adults. And the apps aren't much help. But look, if you have a secret app the rest of us don't know about, and don't just call in and say church, and I don't need you to call in at all. You can send me an email at WBAP.com, James at WBAP.com. You can put a Facebook message together or leave a comment on the YouTube video that's streaming right now. However you want to get me a message, just let me know. For those of you who have had some success in dating as people over the age of 40, where is a good place to meet singles? We'll talk about that in the 4 o'clock hour, and I just want to include some of your suggestions, because I don't have the answer to that at all. I've been with Miss Parker since 2007 and haven't had to really think about such things in a while, and I am amused endlessly watching some of you people go through that process at my age. All right, what did Jasmine Crockett say next on The James Show? I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.